The envelope sat ominously on the polished oak desk in Melania Trump's private study. Inside, secrets waited to explode. Documents implicating her husband, former President Donald Trump, in a web of lies, manipulation, and corruption. The weight of it wasn't just paper. It was the burden of years spent suppressing her voice, standing in the shadow of a man who demanded the world revolve around him. She hadn't slept the night she decided to expose him. Every glance at her teenage son, Barron, reminded her why she had to. His question from weeks before still echoed in her ears. "Mom, is Dad a bad person?" How could she answer that? Barron deserved honesty, a future free from scandal and deceit. But Melania had stayed for so long, for him, for the illusion of family stability. Now, that illusion felt like a prison, and this envelope was her key to freedom. The leak hit the media like a thunderclap. Headlines blared betrayal. Political analysts speculated endlessly about Melania's motives, but no one understood the personal cost. Alone in her bedroom, Melania stared at her reflection in the mirror. Was she a traitor, or had she finally reclaimed her dignity? Donald's fury was inevitable. That evening, he stormed into her private quarters, his tie loosened and his face flushed. He slammed the door shut behind him, a printout of the leaked documents in hand. "What the hell were you thinking, Melania?" he demanded, his voice a mixture of disbelief and rage. She met his gaze, her own voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. "I was thinking about Barron, about the lies we've been living. He deserves better." Donald's voice softened, almost pleading. "Better? Do you think tearing our family apart is better? Do you have any idea what you've done to me?" For the first time in years, Melania let her guard down. "This isn't about you, Donald. It never was. I stayed silent for too long, thinking it was for Barron. But I was wrong. Silence only made things worse." His expression faltered, the bravado cracking just slightly. "I love you, Melania. I always have. Why couldn't you come to me first?" A bitter smile crossed her lips. "Because you only hear what you want to hear." That night, Melania packed her things and left Trump Tower with Barron. They retreated to a secluded estate by a quiet lake, far from the relentless glare of cameras and the chaos of political intrigue. The mornings by the lake were serene. Melania watched Barron laugh and play, his demeanor lighter than she'd seen in years. Yet even in this peace, there was an ache in her chest, a lingering sadness for what they had lost and what could never be reclaimed. One afternoon, as she stood on the dock, watching the ripples of the water, Barron approached her. "Do you think Dad misses us?" he asked softly. Melania hesitated, her voice barely above a whisper. "I think he misses what we were. But sometimes people don't change, Barron." Months passed, and just as Melania began to settle into her new life, the headlines came roaring back. Donald Trump had announced his candidacy for the 2024 presidential election. This time, his message was different. Gone was the bravado, replaced with an uncharacteristic humility. His speeches focused on redemption and unity, promising a new chapter for the nation, and perhaps for himself. One evening, Donald called her. His voice was steady but filled with an unfamiliar vulnerability. "Melania, I've made mistakes, but I want to fix things, not just for the country but for us, for Barron." She didn't respond, the silence between them stretching painfully. A week later, Donald showed up at her doorstep unannounced. The once imposing figure seemed smaller, his usual confidence dimmed. "Melania," he began, his tone soft. "I need you back. I need our family back." She crossed her arms, her expression unreadable. "And why should I believe you've changed, Donald? Words mean nothing without action." He stepped closer, his eyes earnest. I've learned from my mistakes. I'm working to be better for you, for Baron, for everyone. Come back and let's show him what family really means." Her heart wavered. She wanted to believe him, but trust was a fragile thing. "This isn't just about winning an election," she said quietly. "This is about rebuilding everything you tore down." Donald won the election in a shocking upset, his campaign a testament to second chances. On the night of his victory speech, he stood on stage, his voice steady as he addressed the nation. "This isn't just my victory," he said, his gaze scanning the crowd. "It's a chance for all of us to do better, to be better." Then, to everyone's surprise, he turned to Melania, who stood in the wings, and extended his hand. She hesitated for only a moment before stepping forward, her fingers intertwining with his. This time, Melania wasn't just a figurehead by his side. She stood there as a woman who had reclaimed her voice, her peace, and her family. And as she glanced at Baron, who beamed with pride, she knew that sometimes even the most fractured bonds could be mended with love, effort, and a promise of a better tomorrow. Months after the inauguration, the family returned to the lake house. It was their refuge, a place where they could be themselves, away from the pressures of the White House. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Donald and Melania sat on the dock, their feet dangling over the water. He nodded, his voice quiet. "Neither did I, but I'm glad we are." In the distance, Baron's laughter echoed as he chased fireflies along the shore. For the first time in years, Melania felt a glimmer of hope, not just for her family, but for herself. As the stars began to appear, she whispered to herself, "For Baron, for us, for the future."